Hello, folks. Welcome back to the OFL podcast, aka the Our Founding Liars podcast. How's everybody doing today? You doing good? I'm glad to hear it. Okay, listen, we made it. What did we make? We made history. We made it past round one. We're now in round two. This is now a continuing series as of this episode. So thank you. Our collective question asking as a whole got us here. I thank you. I thank her. I thank him. I thank everybody that wished me success. And I wish nothing but the best for my enemies as well. Let me tell you something. How are you listening to this, okay? That's a good question. Perhaps you're listening to this on youtube.com/ourfoundingliars, which is a good option. But I'm here to tell you that there's other options as well. I am now officially on the podcast app, aka iTunes. I don't know how I did it. We've only done two rounds of question asking, and I already infiltrated the Apple headquarters. Perhaps it's a setup, but I don't really care. We're just gonna let it be as it is. This is nice. This is fine. I thank you. Just subscribe to that, okay? I'm also on soundcloud.com/ourfoundingliars. That's where the RSS feed is on. So, either way, however you get the message, you got the message. That's fine, okay? Keep asking questions. Let's get into it. So, I think everybody will agree that last week, the first episode was like an introductory kind of episode, meaning that nothing substantial was said. It was basically 20 minutes of me saying, I think I want to start a podcast, which is kind of weird. Nothing substantial was said, but it was a nice way to have myself introduced to you, and the motif of the show was established, okay? If everything goes right, this might be considered the first episode. Perhaps I should relabel that episode 0 and this episode 1, but what's done is done. It's fine. This way, people can say things like, wow, that host guy has really grown as a broadcaster. By making crappy things first, I can create the illusion that I'm growing as a person. So it's all tactical. Now, for the last week, I was trying to figure out, what do I want to talk about, okay? Now, it's really important because this is the first question that we're going to talk about at length in detail. So better make it count, better make it important. So I came up with like 3 topics, and I was fleshing them out over the course of 7 days. Had the bullet points, had the talking pattern structured and established. And but the thing is, I didn't know which one of these 3 things I wanted to talk about first. So I figured when I recorded, whatever came out of my mouth first would be the said topic. So 5 minutes ago, I walk into the recording booth being my closet. I'm really lucky enough to have a big closet. And I started talking. And the things that came out of my mouth were not related to these 3 topics at all. And then I decided, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to talk about reptilians. That's where we're at right now. Okay? So I restarted it. Got a little more segue of an intro, which is what you're listening to right now. And that's how we're doing it, okay? See, the show is based on impulsivity. It's based on compulsivity. It's exactly like my videos. The best question is an emotional question. I don't care what your therapist says. Always go on instinct, okay? Research questions are encouraged as well. As long as you're asking a question, it's cool with me. You understand? So why am I talking about reptilians so early on? Well, I feel like it's probably important to do because if you look at my actual upload count, I probably have like over 100 uploads. I don't know. I didn't look at it, but I'm assuming maybe like 20%, 15 at least are about reptilians. If it's not about reptilians, it might be related to a reptilian in some way. Fact of the matter is it always comes down to the concept of reptilians. It's just this. It's not my fault. Perhaps you're thinking to yourself, well, that's got to get stale after a while, right? Well, it doesn't. How can I explain this to you? Let me think. Okay, here we go. Mario. Super Mario Brothers. You know what that is? It's a gaming franchise, platformer. You might remember a creature in it called a Goomba. Okay, they're like these little mushroom head guys. The fact of the matter is that you run into these guys almost every level. They're swarming the platforms. There's nothing you can do about it. The programmers programmed it that way. And you got to destroy these Goombas to get to the end, okay? Now, the main boss isn't a Goomba. I don't think he has any Goomba DNA in him. But you got to destroy these Goombas to get to the main boss. Now, there's other enemies on the way too. You got those turtle guys. You got like an angry sun. If you haven't played Mario, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But what I mean to say is Reptilians are my versions of Goombas. They're simply a minion. We might be after something greater and bigger, I don't know. But we got to get through Reptilians because they're the most populated on Earth. It's an infestation. And that's really the fact of the matter. Reptilians are Goombas. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's not a good analogy because if you remember the Super Mario Brothers movie, they actually replaced the main villain, which is Bowser, with the actor Dennis Hopper, who was a literal reptilian, I believe. So according to that interpretation, Reptilians are the ultimate threat, and it is all about them. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the Goombas themselves were replaced with Reptilians, and they were really bad designs, and the fans were really mad. But I guess what the fans didn't realize was that this movie was a little more realistic than the actual gaming franchise, and it was trying to warn us before, Anyway, I digress. Reptilians are bad. Reptilians are Goombas. The point is that they're the most common enemy, maybe not the biggest threat. We don't know what the biggest threat is yet. That's why we're asking questions to figure out. So just learn the vocab of OFL. This is a basic unit of question asking, which is reptilians, okay? It's like the atom of question asking. That's all. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, we can talk about what a reptilian is. What is a reptilian? Sad to say, I don't exactly know 100%. The thing is, I've never met a reptilian face-to-face, or should I say, I've never met a self-admitted reptilian. I probably met thousands of reptilians. I might have met millions of reptilians. If the problem is worse than I think, I might have met billions of reptilians, But the thing is, I've never caught them in their full form. I've seen them in mid-transformation, But I'm not legally liable to say that I've seen a reptilian. And until I capture one in its full form, I'll never fully understand what the heck it is, But I can only tell you based on my observations and my hypothesis, because the research and development, department of reptilians is non-existent. OFL is the closest we're going to get, okay? So just stick with me. We'll find out what a reptilian is soon. But what I know for now is that they're definitely an extraterrestrial race. I'm not sure what planet, depending on who you talk to. It varies, But what we can all agree on is that they're an alien race with DNA that is very similarly structured to that of reptiles on Earth. It's not the same. If you were a scientist, you could be fooled at first glance, but further digging will tell you that's a completely foreign DNA strand entirely. I believe their full form can only be seen in some kind of ultramagnetic light. That's my hypothesis. I don't know if anybody else thinks that, but when there's a will, there's a way. I believe it. We can, we'll figure it out, okay? The closest anybody's come to figuring out what exactly these things are is a guy named David Icke, okay? He made a bunch of books about reptilians, and you know what? This is kind of the last I'm going to talk about him in the podcast because he's a huge competitor of mine. Quite frankly, I think he might have stole some of my work. He has this new theory about the moon being a satellite, and when I say a satellite, I mean a literal, cable TV station thing for reptilian media, except that was my theory. He changed it into a Death Star kind of thing. And I don't really like the guy. I think he's a hack. But I do have to mention him because he's, imperative to reptilian academia or reptilian awareness academia. They have their own institutions that they indoctrinate, people into. That's another thing. They change people into reptilians too. Some of them are hybrids that were originally human DNA. That's why it's a problem. They're running amok, turning our women into reptilians, turning our men into reptilians. It's not good. Pretty soon, nobody's going to have to tell you what a reptilian is because you will be a reptilian yourself if it's too late and you didn't listen to this podcast in time. Another thing that I'd like to say about reptilians real quick is that I've noticed that they became kind of like a forefront of meme culture, meaning that a lot of people are kind of aware of the concept of reptilians, but they don't really know like the details of it. Therefore, they talk about it in a mocking way. In fact, when you hear the term conspiracy theorist, which by the way was created as a mocking term to discredit anybody that didn't believe the JFK narrative, that is true, look it up. People think to themselves when they hear the words conspiracy theorist that they are crazy lizard people believers. Okay? So although I am happy in a way that this is in the public awareness, it saddens me, it disturbs me really, that it's in a mocking tone. Also, on that note, lizard people, I don't believe in that term. For the sake of this podcast, we will refer to them as reptilians, because to call them a lizard person is to suggest that they have humanity traits. These guys are cold-blooded killers. They don't have emotions. All the emotions that they have learned through basic reptilian unit training, you know? So to call them anything less than a monster is doing them a service, you understand? So I, for one, am not going to support the enemy. I suggest you won't either. You can call them reptoids. You can call them reptile humanoids. That's the closest I'll get to having the word human in it. But for the sake of this podcast, we're just going to go with reptilians, okay? So, by the way, I feel kind of partially responsible for the whole reptilian meme thing, because when I started, nobody knew what the heck I was talking about. It was not a full-blown internet joke yet, you understand? So I think I might have brought it to the YouTube world a little bit. And, because, like, when I told people what a reptilian was, they looked at me in awe, and then they stopped talking to me. I'm assuming they went to do their own research, and they're afraid for their safety to be associated with me, which is not a good move. They should have subscribed. They should have, maintained a communication with me, but that's okay. I understand, okay? We all have our own ways of fighting. Some fight in isolation. Okay, so now we've come to a very important part of the podcast. It's a part that you're probably tuning in for. How can you yourself spot a reptilian? Well, there's no really real way to answer this because their technology is vastly superior to human technology. So by the time this podcast comes out, it might be dated because they're constantly working on, devices to bypass the things that we have detected. They have spies everywhere. I am assuming this podcast will be on their radar eventually, but in the meantime, in the short interim, I think this will suffice, okay? So, number one, first of all, these guys always, and I mean always, overdress. Why is this? Well, they have reptilian DNA, or at least DNA similar to that of the reptiles on Earth. So that would mean, logically speaking, that they are in fact cold-blooded. Now, if you're cold-blooded, you need a warm temperature to live in, you understand? And the planet that they're from is, probably, logically thinking, of course, is probably a hot planet. And they're trying to migrate to this planet that, unfortunately for them, is not always of an adequate temperature. So they got to do something. They're always overdressing. They're always, sweating. They're always complaining about the weather. If anybody says it's too cold, they're probably a reptilian. Now, one thing I'm really proud about with my channel, OFL, aka Our Founding Liars, is that I have uncovered something about the reptilians that no other, theorist has uncovered before. And I feel like I should get like an award for it, but at this point I know it's not going to happen, so a good deed is its own reward, okay? I don't need a journalist like medal or whatever. Here's the thing. I believe these guys have created two separate devices, okay? And these devices are made to bypass their little weather fiasco. The first device is manipulating the weather itself. It's turning the cold temperatures into hot temperature so they can, have a habitat in it, okay? All the states that you know to be cold are actually hot now if the reptilians are in fact in it, okay? Colorado, New York, all those states. But you're probably thinking to yourself, that doesn't make any sense. I live in Colorado. I live in New York. What are you talking about? It's cold. I can feel it. Well, that's the second device. They have created some kind of thing, I believe to be in like infected tree roots, probably, or branches, those little bulges that come out of the branches. They're spreading some kind of chemical that messes with your perception. The neurological pathways of your brain perceives the temperature to be whatever the reptilians programmed, okay? So, to your knowledge, the seasons are still intact. You understand? It's kind of crazy. There are visual cues to see if it's hot or not. Spoiler alert, it's in the leaves. I'm not going to get too into it because I have videos on the subject. I encourage you to look at my playlist on my site called Autumn is a Hoax, and you will see the visual evidence for yourself, okay? Number 2, a little more subtle thing. Reptilians change their opinions all the time because they're changing their suits all the time. They're shapeshifters. So one would believe that maybe the programming of their brains are attached to their suits. So it might, might get like cross-wired a little bit. They might be talking a little bit differently than you saw them last time. If you have a friend that you get along with, you have a lot of common interests, you don't see him in 10 years. Then when you see him, he's like really different. He's got like a doctor or lawyer job or something, and you still have this stupid blue-collar job, and he's mocking you about it. He's definitely a reptilian, okay? People don't change that fast. It's only been 10 years, I got some friends like that. It's really sad. They probably have always been reptilians. Maybe they've been converted into reptilians due to their hybrid tube devices that they have now. I don't know. Point is, never trust flip-floppers. Never trust people that say that they're just evolving as humans. Because who uses that term, really? I already assume you're a human. You know that Shakespeare quote, I think the lady protests too much or something? Why can't you just say that you changed your mind? You evolved as a human. What the? That's a reptilian. That's an overcompensating reptilian. Okay, number 3. This is something I learned yesterday, which you could argue sparked the entire idea to do this particular episode, okay? I uploaded a video yesterday where I saw an air freshener. On this air freshener, there was a little logo on it. It was an R with a circle around it. All of a sudden, I realized that I've seen this R before. I've seen this R in many places. It's in a lot of corporations. It's in a lot of brands. This must be the reptilian logo. It's probably on their flags. Their armies probably are waving it. Reptilians are like narcissistic 60s Batman villains. They're putting their stamp on everything. They're very smart. They're very calculating. So of course they're getting the major corporations and they're putting this logo there. In fact, they say it's called restricted. It's sort of similar to trademark, but with even crazier, ramifications to it. It's not good. I was reading the comments on my video, and there was one comment that struck me in particular. Let me bring it up real quick. And it got my mind racing, okay? I pinned the comment. It's by a guy named Couchy Gang or Kachi Gang. I don't know how you say it, but it doesn't matter. What matters is the words he wrote, and I know what he's saying here. Let me just read it verbatim. I have done my duty as a responsible citizen and took up to a trustworthy search engine in order to find out more about that quote-unquote R symbol, and boy did I find something. If you simply type the letter R and then the /, which is how they usually lose even the best investigators, you will get hundreds of results that all redirect to a malicious reptilian exchange platform called Reddit. The little robot on their front page makes me think that the transhuman lobby might have something to do with that as well, but I only had so much time to leave the platform before they would track me to my location and steal my bladder for their Lizard Interstellar hot air balloon project. It is through videos like this that we will uncover the truth, and naturally by keeping on asking questions. Stay safe out there, people. Keep asking questions. Now that blew my mind. Reddit. Of course it's the Reptilian Hub. It's in the name. R. I was banned from Reddit humor, for crying out loud. I have a video about that. They don't want me there. Why is this? It's because they're reptilians and they know that I'm the forefront on the fight against them. But this got me thinking. Maybe there's more to the letter R. You ever see that movie Pontypool? I'm going to spoil it, so you might not want to listen to this part if you actually want to watch it. But if you haven't watched it at this point, whatever. It's kind of like a zombie movie. However, instead of infecting a physical virus, it infects words. So what if R is a reptilian device. Maybe that's how they're changing people into reptilian hybrids. Maybe the word "are" itself, when I say "are you okay," is empowering the reptilian somehow. I don't know. Haven't really thought this out. It's just a little, seed of an idea right now, but maybe it's the smoking gun. I don't know. Unfortunately, we have to use these sounds. It's kind of like capitalism, I don't know another way. Is there a better way? I don't know. Is it good? Probably not, but point of the matter is that we have to do these R sounds. So maybe that's probably the key, I'll get more on this later. Here's the thing. I think we're going to wrap this up today. I like to keep this at like a 20-minute kind of ratio, these podcasts for now. Maybe I'll do longer, maybe I'll do shorter. I don't know. But listen, thank you. Thank you for supporting me. You can check my support options on my channel. Got social media and all that. And listen, above all things, everybody, just remember, if you want to fight the reptilians, you got to do this. You listening? Keep asking questions.